From Rule 62 Studios in Bossier City, Louisiana, this is The Grouch and the Brainstorm. Welcome back. Sorry, Jill. I accidentally did not turn down I was turning down her microphone. We don't need another episode like that. And I wasn't turning. Remember, you didn't have a microphone on a whole episode.
And I don't hear me at all. Okay, there we go.
There you go. Now, so we got it fixed. So I am Mike, and I'm joined today with Matt.
What's up?
And Jill.
Hey, guys.
And our guest is Steven.
Howdy.
Hey, welcome, Steven. Glad to have you here, man.
Thank you, sir.
So a couple things we got to, clear up. One, we're doing a late drop this week. Jill, how was vacation?
Vacation was very nice.
Yeah.
Much needed getaway with the girls.
Saw the pictures. Sorry. And I guess, Matt, you're going this weekend?
I am. Probably New Orleans.
Oh,
Nice.
wow.
Just we got to get out of the house, man. We've had tornadoes,
Yes.
tore up a house we just moved into. So we've been living with a bunch of people in a little bitty house with air mattresses. That's a lot of fun.
Well,
So
there wouldn't be someone named Manson running that thing. Would
I don't think so.
Oh,
but
not again.
sometimes it feels like I'm involved in that as I
Yeah.
sit there in the chaos of the 9,000 people in the house with nothing to do.
Do you call yourself
So-
a family?
They may be tamer than the people in my family over here, but it's been a long few weeks, and we're just gonna sneak out of the house and just go somewhere
Yeah.
quiet with
Yeah.
no
I get it.
stuff going on,
I
you know.
get it.
So
Well, before we go too much further, I want to remind everyone that our website is fully active. Grouchandbrainstorm.com. That's grouchandbrainstorm.com. Now, I have, up until 2 weeks ago, we released every episode where you could listen on. 2 weeks ago, my daughter had a baby. So we welcomed Everest Ryu into the world 2 weeks ago. And there has been a few issues, so that she's been tied up and taking care of her family and taking care of the baby and making sure that it gets out of the hospital healthy, happy, and okay. And all of them do. So she is the one who downloads the episodes to the website. So you're still going to be able to listen to them on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but for probably the next few episodes until she gets up and around. I do not know how to do that. I actually update the website with the right readings and everything every day. And then if you need to put anything on there or anything, just call me, text me, shoot me an email, or send me an email through the website. And thanks to all the folks who have contributed. We've had some donations come through the website. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Appreciate that, guys. We do nothing but keep the show going with it. That is all. Nothing extra. We're not funding anything that people may not agree with other than this website. So, and it goes through the nonprofit, not through Mike Walston or Jill or Matt.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, thank you all for that. So any communication, you can do it through there, of course, through our Instagrams. And Matt's been avid on Instagram trying to get people to look at our stuff. And
the internet. I'll get into some of that in a minute, but it's so funny with social media. I had a guy yesterday shoot me a message, and he lives in London, and the message said, "Did you go to LSU in the late 90s?"
You got to say it in the accent.
Well, I can't.
Hello, mate. Did you go?
I think that's Australian.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
All I have is redneck. That's all I have.
Steve Irwin would kill me.
But the guy just out of the blue, he says, "Hey, did you go to LSU?" And I said, "I never was enrolled there.
Ended up there,
But I did get a higher education in Tigerland, especially around 96, 97, 98. Come to find out, this dude came over there. I'm an alcoholic. If 20, 30 years later, I'm getting a thing about, I remember you. And I'm like, oh.
Stop it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we had a good time down there. It's what's wound me up in here with you guys. But
many nights in Baton Rouge.
He's back in London, England, wherever England part he's in. And we ended up talking on Instagram, and it was wild back then.
Interesting.
Yeah, so
It was. What, Murphy's and
everything in Tigerland, Texas Club, LSU dorms, and
frat
apartment.
houses.
Yes, all those. So
I missed that one.
Never read one book in all that time. It was no studying. So, but anyway, yeah. So it's pretty cool. But
I went to LSU Shreveport.
Well,
We just didn't do
didn't
do nothing.
Well, I understand.
Didn't do anything.
There's not a lot going on over there.
I remember walking through the mall.
Well, I mean, I didn't do nothing.
Big open area, nothing going on.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. But here's what's also crazy about that: the guy's also sober now too.
Oh, good.
And so I met him on a thing. So we were both kind of in the same boat back then, and we both are now. So
well, birds of a feather tend to hang out.
That's right.
Something
that's
like
right.
that. I'm not really sure what the axiom is or whatever it's called.
Yeah, but that's interesting, man. That's pretty cool to come across people like that and be able to talk to them, and
especially from England.
Sure, somewhere over there.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't want to lose any of our English followers.
That's right.
Now that they know you have a friend there.
That's right.
Man, so I was thinking, me and Matt were talking, and I guess not too long ago we had the topic at I think it was a noon meeting that I had came over here for, and the topic basically was, what is the problem, right? And so I'm gonna read something, and I've read it on here before, and actually I'm not gonna read it. I'm just gonna have to say it because here it is, right? Here it is. So see if this sounds familiar. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me, and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help. Of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life, may I do thy will always. Now, on the surface, everybody's been around a minute knows exactly what that is, right? It's a third step prayer. I don't know who invented the third step prayer. It didn't come out of the Bible. I don't think third step prayer. I don't think there's any steps in the Bible. It should have been. But so the way I dig into that thing is I come into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and one of the first things that I hear people saying around is, I never knew what the problem is, and I'm the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And every single person seems to say that after a while. But I was thoroughly convinced myself alcohol was the problem.
Oh, absolutely.
That, if alcohol didn't exist, okay, and I'm going somewhere with this, right? If alcohol didn't exist, then I would be fine, okay? The problem is, number one, it does exist. And number two, I don't realize that there's something else going on there. So I'm going to put this in a little bit better context for everyone here. I have been sober for a while, since June 21st, 2011, okay? I am on my 4th motorcycle in 3 months, purchasing. There's something wrong with that.
So what's the problem, Mike?
The problem is not Harley Davidson. Okay, so here's where I'm going with that. And by the way, I'm trading up every time because I just want a bigger and better. I got to have more. I recognize it.
Okay.
I'm just too stupid to stop, right? So I guess my problem is a lot of stuff. But where I'm going with that is because, I'm not married. I don't answer to anybody. My finances belong to me. If something happens, it's just on me. I ain't got to worry about any of that, right? So I don't cause harm to anybody by doing anything. But when it comes to alcohol, it's not like that. I drive drunk. I make bad decisions. I don't go to work. I don't pay my bills. I don't do a lot of stuff. And especially when I was drinking, I had children and a wife at home that were dependent on me to be, somewhat of a decent human being. So, but I even now, all these years later, you just take the alcohol out, you still got something going on there, right? And I can recognize it now and choose to or not to do anything about it. That's up to me. But I'm not going to end up in jail doing what I'm doing. not that it's good to have something going on other than that. Because some people turn to gambling. Some people turn to, if they're just alcoholics, they'll turn to drugs, or if they're drug addicts, they'll turn to alcohol. So I am the problem. What makes me the problem? And Jill, you're the brain expert here. So you, not me in general.
Wait, I'm not? Go ahead, Jill. Go ahead.
We got to find one to make you the expert.
I mean, this is exactly where I thought this would probably end up going, but it's not necessarily me, but it's my thoughts. And it is the false and irrational thoughts and my perceptions and beliefs of everything that's happened, which back in the day were complete bullshit. And so I think that is, I was just explaining to clients today about, there may be an event, there always is an event. And then there's a thought about that event. That thought brings a feeling upon me and then becomes a behavior, an action, if you will. So if my thoughts are distorted, then most likely my, behavior will be as well. So it's your thoughts, man. And so if I think about, I perceived everything in a negative way, and everything to me was failure, rejection, you suck. And that's kind of stuff that I told myself. You're a loser. You're stupid. You're never going to amount to anything. No one's going to love you. All this horrible shit, which that was the problem right there. And so my solution was alcohol and drugs. It never was, hey, let me change my thought pattern. Let me change these neural pathways so that I have a healthier way of thinking. And I mean, believe me, it's taken years, many, many years. Cognitive behavioral therapy is not something you just do. You're taught and you do it and you're cured. It's something that takes a lot of time, and it takes skill, and it takes practice, and it takes doing it over and over and over again, for those thoughts to change and to become new beliefs. And so, outside of AA, I've done a lot of, like rational emotive behavioral therapy and CBT and whatnot. And I said CBT, not D.
Or EBT. That's a different kind of therapy.
But you see what I'm saying? And so I was able to change my thoughts on everything. And so now, instead of looking at the negative, I can look at things in a positive light. And that has changed everything. Another, way I was able to do that is through gratitude list. Mm-hmm. That is exactly what that is taking something and being grateful for it instead of seeing, all the crap around. And, but to me, absolutely, it was deeper than just me. It's my thoughts. And they're pretty positive now. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah. It's funny how but I like what you said about practicing. It's a practicing thing. I mean, it's not you don't just go to treatment and they hand you this magical little box of stuff and you just inhale it and you walk out and you're this perfect example of humanity for everyone else to see. It doesn't work that way. And Stephen's nodding his head. I know he knows, and we all know in this room.
Guys,
it's a battle, and you have back and forth. You feel like you lose ground sometimes, but overall, when I get up every day and I look in the mirror, period, end of story, I'm staring at the problem.
Yeah.
So
I'm staring at it. Yeah. And so the drugs and alcohol, this may or may not be an opinion. This is my opinion, but they were a medicine or an antidote that kept me from doing something worse than what I was doing, because it put a Band-Aid on me. And so when I got rid of the substances, I went, oh,
that's when it really hits you.
Yeah. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Wait, like they actually, in the beginning, that's the problem with drugs and alcohol. They work, so you get rid of this anxiety and all these things in your body telling you, well, you're not, you're this, you're that, all those thoughts Jill's talking about. You can kind of soothe that, I guess you could say, initially. long term, that doesn't work real well when you're one of us, because it becomes its own monster and its own problem. But it, 6 years down the road, 5-6 years down the road, I still have a sponsor. I still go to him and go, hey, what am I doing here? I just talked to him about something with a child of mine last week on an issue. And I went, I want to make sure that I'm down the middle on this and that I'm thinking right. And we were in agreement on what was happening. But even things like that, I have to, and I'm grateful to have that, to be able to check where I'm at and where I'm thinking with other people. That kind of lets me bounce that off and gives me a little confidence going forward as I've gone into sobriety, to go, I realize I've made a mess of things. I don't know always what the right answer is, but I've been humbled enough that I know some people that might. So I'm gonna bounce that off them, and it becomes second nature now when there's a big decision. I always talk to sponsor, talk to other people. I've talked to Jill. I've talked to Mike. At different times, there's different people in recovery that may be their area of expertise, and I'll go to them and go, hey, is this right, not right? Because at the end of the day, I hadn't had a drink or a drug or anything in 6 years, and I still have issues. I still get up every day and I got to deal with Matthew, and that joker. You don't want to mess with
He's
him.
a wild one.
He can get out of hand quick.
Yeah.
And but Stephen was nodding his head about dealing with this, and I think I think people they get fresh out of treatment, or they get off the alcohol and all that stuff, and they put her along for a few months or a few weeks, and they go, well, wait a minute, I feel terrible. Like this is not good. And in all actuality, that's just a part of getting sober. That's the part that goes with it. And you feel like you're almost losing ground, because you're like, wait a minute, now I feel like crap, and people don't like me, and I've done all this stuff to people. What do I do? And so it's just a part of that ebb and flow of getting out of that, and it takes time. And pretty soon you do ease out of that, where it's not so much the bad and the dragging back, but it, like Jill said, it takes time.
Takes work. It takes time and a lot of frustration. It's really hard, especially if you've had this belief for 20 years, 30 years, or you've had it for a long time. And to you, it's not false at all. It's 100% your reality. And that's where the delusion begins. And it's hard to smash that. Especially when, like I said, you have your solution taken away from you and you're forced to do this. When you're feeling pretty bad about yourself.
Well, and I still feel bad about myself. No, I'm kidding.
Mike.
So Steven's here for a reason.
Well, what you said about the mental things really connected for me. I struggle with mental health as well as alcoholism.
And that can tell you some stuff as well.
Yeah, exactly. And my most recent relapse was because I didn't tackle both problems. I was so worried about not drinking. I wasn't paying any attention to my mental health.
Yeah.
Got to have that balance there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that's the path that I'm on now, is trying to find that balance and attack both fronts at the same time. Because it was like Matt said, I was at a point where I was 3 months sober, but I felt like shit.
Yeah.
Excuse my language.
No.
And I couldn't go back to alcohol, or I shouldn't have. And when I did, it didn't help like it had in the past. It just made everything worse. It amplified all the problems that I had. And, alcohol did work for me at some point in my life, but it's definitely at the point where I can't mask my mental health issues with alcohol.
Yeah. And that's why they say a full program of recovery, because it's not just the alcoholism. It is your mental health, your physical health, emotional health, and spiritual. I mean, and it's the full it's everything.
And and I like you said spiritual too, because I didn't even get on that. But with like you're talking about though, masking it, we talk about masking it with us, and it may for a little bit, but it doesn't really. We know deep down, hey, this is just I'm trying to deal with how I feel. But the thing is, do you think anybody else around us is masked from them? Not a bit.
Yeah.
Not one bit. They're like, oh, he's off his rocker and he's drunk, you know?
Well, I'm gonna tell you now. I have to commend Stephen for even he recognizes the mental health issues, and
Yeah.
a lot of us. I'm gonna tell you now. I'm gonna think the whole 7 billion people out there have mental health issues, and what I got going on up here is right.
Sure.
That's me. That's just how I'm gonna do it. So and of course you have to tackle those because some of those, kind of like the chicken and the egg. What came first, the mental health issue or the alcohol problem or the alcohol, we get bogged down sometimes trying to figure out which one. And, with the right guidance, we can treat both and probably have a pretty healthy life, but it is a balance thing.
And
most people don't recognize that.
Yeah. And Mike, you know this person that I'm talking about because you called me about him last year, but I actually had a guy ask me about sponsoring him one time, and I met him and talked to him. And he had a mental health issue. I don't think he had a drug and alcohol issue. And it was very weird. It's the only one I've ever had. But after going through his history with him, that was the drugs and alcohol wasn't even, it was a very minor deal.
Mm-hmm.
He had some major mental health stuff going on, and he was going through a deal with that. And I said, I think you need to stick with that, and you and I can work on this other stuff. But in my own head, I went, this isn't really the problem. Like, he's got some serious. And I think being able to recognize that, and he was doing everything he could, bless his heart, to just try to get through, and I was like, man, we can do whatever you want to do. But I knew he needed to stay where he was at and doing what he was doing way more than he needed to worry about drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we get a lot of people that come in with that kind of stuff, and working in treatment and working around people like that. Sometimes that stuff wears off and the drugs wear off, and you go, oh, there's another serious issue here,
And there's a lot to be said about that, because not everybody walks around and knows that you need to take care of the mental first before the substance. And why the dual diagnosis, facility, was created, because it is more so than not that people like us have some type of mental illness.
Sure.
And it's very common for us to, self-medicate because of those. Very, very, very common.
How many people tell you, oh, it's the only time I felt normal?
Yeah.
That saying right there is just, it's like something's missing and we don't know how to deal with it. So we deal with it on our own, and
the best way we know how to, unfortunately. And sometimes that's not the healthiest.
Steve, do you mind me asking, how long have you got this particular?
I'm working on week 3.
Cool.
Okay.
Yep.
My most recent relapse was very recent.
Okay. No, I get it. So how long have you been overall trying to get sober? Like for years?
About 4 years.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So about 4 years ago, you finally said, hey, enough is enough, and I'm going to at least start trying to do something.
Yeah. I actually started with AA, did okay with it, with the program. Had a little bit of problem with my sponsors. I, ended up not continuing with AA. But I managed to put together 2 full years.
Okay.
And, I was really proud of myself. And then I had a major event in my life. And I can look at it now and say, well, I just used that as an excuse.
Mm.
Yes, it was traumatizing. And yes, it was put me in a downward mental health spiral. But I just used that as an excuse to start drinking again. And this time, the drinking was so much worse. I tried to quit when it wasn't that bad, and then it got worse. I was drinking more, blacking out more, just being a downright horrible person to the people around me. And I really thought rehab was going to be the solution this time. And it worked for about 3 months, but like we said, that balance, I wasn't going to church. I wasn't paying attention to mental health, You know, I wasn't doing AA. I wasn't doing any of the things that you need to do to put together a successful program of sobriety. And with the way that works, you're going to end up relapsing, and that's what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah, I get that, man. So I put 11 years from 2000, maybe 99 to 2011. I tried to get sober. And I remember one time I had strung together 3 weeks, you know, and a major event happened in my life, right? And it wasn't even major. I let it be major because it was a damn good reason, you know. But, you know, and it was major. It was major to one of my sisters, and it was major to my parents. But to me, it wasn't a major event. But it was a major event, if that makes any sense. But I allowed that, you know. So then I had my very first sponsor. I started in 2000. By 2006, I think I might have eased into a sponsor, or 2005, 4, somewhere in there, working on getting me somebody to work. And then like immediately this happened, and boom, I was gone. I was gone again for a couple of years.
You already had it coming.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That
Yeah.
was
There's so in 11, it took me 11. Right. So you've been trying a lot, and then I'm not saying take 11. 11 shouldn't. I've seen people who they wake up and for some reason they just decide, hey, today's the day, and they go to an AA meeting, and 30 years later they're still going to AA meetings talking about how they didn't need to go to treatment and all this other stuff that, you know, doesn't matter. But my point is, some of us it takes more, and some of it takes less. So, you know, by far, you know, I might be 13 years sober, but it took 11 years to get me to where I could stay sober for, I don't know, 92 days is the most time I strung together in 11 years. 92 days. And I was proud of myself too, by the way. I went out and celebrated, you know, like a hero.
You was thirsty, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Like-
that's kind of the condition of my disease at this point, is it doesn't take a major event now. And this last time wasn't really, I mean, yes, I was depressed and I was all these things, but I just took a simple fight with the girlfriend and turned that into a reason to drink.
Hell yeah.
And that was the stupidest reason to start drinking again.
Well, I'm going to tell you, a cat getting loose in the house would be a good one for me. And it just don't.
A Tuesday, you know. I'm good with that.
Well, you know, I hate, you know, not to give anybody any reasons, but I was listening to Matt's situation earlier, you know, where he has all these, you know,
Tornado and
living in the family and all this other stuff going on. And I was thinking, man, what a stressful situation.
You know what? I mean, I've always been very honest over here. The other day, I'm telling you, when you get jammed up at a house, so my girlfriend and I are sitting there, and it's just like a jungle, you know, and we're making the best of it. It's been great. But I was sitting there the other day, and she walked by, and I was like, you know, for the first time in a long time, Jack Daniels doesn't sound like such a bad idea. And she started laughing. I was like, I'm kind of just playing, but I'm kind of not. And she's like, shut up. I was like, I know, my nerves are getting a little, you know, but
Honey, you want to get used to living on the streets.
yeah,
Get some Jack Daniels.
yeah, the problem is I got an air mattress now. If I started drinking, it would be no air mattress. So, you know, it can always get worse. But, you know, hey, man, it's like you're talking about, though, the practice of things. 2 years sober, I don't think I would have handled this situation like I'm handling it now. And I've handled it pretty well. You know, and I immediately look at it with gratitude, like immediately. I'm like, man, this could have been so much worse. Here's the things.
But how long did it take you to get to that? Because that wasn't overnight for me
Oh, no.
to start
No.
seeing. Like I said, that's that shift of perspective.
Oh, yeah. But it takes practice to do that. And I would whine and fuss, and everybody's out to get me. And then I have pictures of gratitude lists from old sponsees early on, and they'd be like, I can't be grateful for nothing. I have one, and he says, I learned to cook a pizza in a microwave. It wasn't too bad. That's what it says on his gratitude list. I'm like, that's disgusting, but hey, we'll take it, you know? So little things,
I
man.
actually happen to
we're-
like microwave pizza.
See,
Mike, that doesn't surprise me. sir.
I'm in IOP right now, and every time you go in, you have to list 3 things that you're grateful for. You know, and you would think after months of doing this that I would be better at finding the things to be grateful for, but I have to rack my brain every time I go in there to try to think of something. It just doesn't come natural. So I can see where if it's that hard for me, I know it's got to be that hard for other people to rewire that part of your brain.
It was.
Sure.
Now they're like, what are you grateful for? I'm like, I make my, my clients do it. And so, but yeah, I mean, and they're like, Miss Lamshar, what are yours? And I'm just like, tell me when to stop.
Yeah, I can roll. I can roll,
Yeah, I
man.
know.
And that's been the shift in attitude, is to realize where I was. You start looking and go, oh, okay, this wasn't that long ago, Bubba. Now look at your life now and look at the people in my life. That's the thing I'm most grateful for. Man, you have no idea. I'm surrounded by this group of people, my AA family, and a few other people in my life. And it's just like a rising tide picking a boat up. That's all it is. And it does not take me. I can go a while. So, on gratitude, but it's definitely a quick cure all for a lot of stuff.
For sure.
But and talking about the spiritual part too, we kind of overlooked that earlier. Not overlooked it, but we didn't talk about it. But when I figured out that I wasn't in control of everything, and I came into treatment, and I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, and I figured out that Matt does not run the show, nor does he can't even run himself, much less everybody else. But I wanted to. That's what I wanted to do. When I figured that out, and I had to do these 1, 2, and 3 steps, and Mike read the 3rd step prayer, there is somebody who's in control of it, and it isn't me. And when I realized that, what it did was it freed me up from having all that. I got to control everything. Now I don't worry about, I just
suit up and show up.
What's right in front of me?
Yep.
Let's deal with that right now. I'm not, what do they call that? Future tripping. I heard that one the other day. That's a new one on me.
Really?
But yeah. And I mean,
I don't
got
have any
somebody
reason to. Like, I have God taking care of everything, and now I get to sit back and just take the ride.
Yeah.
It's nice.
But getting to that point where you have God taking care of everything and sitting back, you've been around a minute.
Many, many, many years of not believing or trusting. And
But you know how it all started? Was my sponsor saying, you need to pray every morning. And I went, for what? Like, what am I going to pray about? So I had this little car. It had no windows. It was destroyed, but it ran good. And I used to drive it to work, and I would just go, God, this sucks. Like, I don't like not being high. I don't know how to do this. I feel like shit. I don't like it. And that's how I started prayer, because my sponsor told me to do it. I didn't even know if it was going to work, but here's what did work. And what got me further along, I didn't drink and I didn't use that day. And I didn't drink and I didn't use the next day. And I kept doing that. And then it was like, well, maybe, okay, thanks for, and it's thanks at the end of the day. So simple.
so powerful.
And that's where it started, and it started from there, and it took time to do that. And I remember looking at those promises on the wall in the Koala Club, and I was sitting there and I had 90 days, and I was like, I don't even know what all that shit is. Like, I don't know is this a deal? Like, I don't know what that is. And then 9 or 10 months in, I sat there every day staring at those promises, and 9 or 10 months in, and I went, oh, wait a minute. That one's kind of true, and that one's a little bit true, and things were shifting. They were shifting, and I went, okay, well, I was like 11 months before I remember having a day where I didn't think about getting high or drunk. Like, it just never occurred to me. 11 months, but that was okay, and I remember going, I don't think I thought about that today. Like, you know what I mean? It was that big of a deal to me, but it's always started with the small stuff. And when I realized that obviously I had screwed up with using substances my whole life, and then to get to a place where I went, it's out of my hands. I'm just going to do the best I can with what's literally right in front of me. 15 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, till lunchtime, till the end of the day, whatever I can make that day, I'm going to work on that. And then I'm going to work on the next little section. And I'm not going to worry about let the chips fall where they may. And when I started doing that, I started letting God was taking care of that stuff in front of me. And as it went along, I started seeing where he was taking care of that stuff, because all the stuff that was happening was none of my doing. You know, it wasn't any of my doing. I couldn't have been, because I never paid any attention to it. And that sort of is where my spiritual part of it grew, from that and from seeing the example of it happening. But it did take a lot of,
Well, there,
You know?
and probably Stephen being around, a few weeks now, recovering, he can probably understand and relate to the fact that all that stuff, the spiritual talk, WTF,
Mhm.
I just don't, come on, I just keep waking up drunk,
yeah.
See,
y'all keep talking about praying and shit.
See, I grew up in church,
Mhm.
So I've been around it basically my entire life.
What denomination?
Non-denominational.
Okay, gotcha.
Pentecostal.
Oh,
But not the long dresses and long hair Pentecostal.
there might be a connection
Just
there,
the
Stevie.
speaking in tongues
You were going there with
Pentecostal.
it.
I was raised Pentecostal.
So, but I actually spent 2 years as a missionary, and during that time did a lot of praying and seeking God and watching him do things for the ministry that I was involved in. And so you would think it would be easy to go back to that and put it in God's hands.
Mm.
But even with that experience and with knowing that if I can do this, if I can do the prayer and if I can turn it over to God, it'll be a lot easier on me. I'm still trying to hold on to the reins.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. A lot of people told me that were raised in religious,
Well,
households told me they would have, they told me I was lucky that I started with a blank
well, and
slate.
it says in the 12 and 12, some people that come from, may have a harder time than those that people who believe, and I'm paraphrasing, but may have a harder time than or those who had faith or walked away from faith. I think it says may have a harder go at it than
Mhm.
those who never had faith at all. I get that, right?
Yeah.
I get that, so understand that completely. I coming from a religious background, just like that, I couldn't connect the dots. Prayer, I get, I understand. I even understood the kind of prayer we do in AA, thy will be done. I get it. I understand. I knew that when I got here. I could watch my mom whenever we'd have a tragedy, something happened, and, well, it's God's will, Michael. That's just how it is. It kind of is what it is, was the philosophy growing up. Sucks, but it's the truth, right?
Yes, it is.
And
I love it.
sometimes the truth sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But I never connected the dots on AA. So when you're raised with that religion of it is what it is, hey, I got a drinking problem. It is what it is. It's a really good excuse. God led me in this direction. I followed, and nothing could be further than the truth, right? I mean, I didn't do that, but that's how the whole religious thing. I get it, man. I get it.
Yeah, that's just not my first thing is even with AA or with the spiritual aspects, they're not my first coping mechanism.
Mhm.
They really should be. I should think about, if I'm struggling that day, I should think about saying a prayer, and asking for his will and his help in that hard time, or, fall back on some of the things that I hear about in the AA rooms, things that people do to train their thought processes to move away from that. It's just not second nature yet.
And it will be.
And
So second step.
But
says
it helps to hear things like Matt's, where he's talking about it was like 11 months, before some of that stuff really started to come around.
Oh, yeah, that takes a while.
Yeah, well, first off, I mean, and Jill, correct me, but you got to start making some brain chemicals,
Yeah.
don't you?
Yeah.
Like you don't have the dopamine or the
Okay, so
Or-
actually, early recovery is actually really common to suffer from depression, anxiety, and things like that, because that's the body's physiological response to removing the drugs from your system. Things aren't working the way they used to. Post-acute withdrawals can last for quite a while. Most people have pretty bad anxiety and pretty bad depression coming off of substances because their body has been depleted of, things like serotonin and dopamine, all those feel good hormones. And your body, even though you've gone through acute withdrawals, your body is still having a reaction to those cravings. It just takes a while.
Yeah, you're just kind of depressed and shitty, and then you go to meetings and you hear people say stuff like, we'll love you till you can't love
you're like,
yourself, and you're like, I don't want anybody.
You're like, I hate you and I hate myself too.
I don't care to be loved. People leave me.
I was like, what the hell are they talking
Man,
about?
I went in the Koala Club and then people were laughing and carrying on and hugging, and I'm like,
you
what the
can-
hell is wrong with these
Steve,
people?
I know he can relate from being in the church, and Matt, wasn't your dad
Yep,
preacher? Okay.
that was preacher.
But you have something major happen. Someone pass away, and someone shows up with a thing of lasagna. And you're like, I'm sorry, I'm grieving and not starving. You got the wrong ing here.
Yeah.
And that's what when you walk into AA, that's what you kind of, and I think sometimes we forget what that shitty feeling is like, and it was shitty.
I don't think I'll ever forget that. I mean, like, to me, I don't know, I'm reminded of it on a daily basis. And I know it's in there, if that makes any sense.
So Stephen, what do you do? Like let's just say now that you've gotten 3 weeks, what gives you the fortitude to move forward?
Man, really and truly right now, I'm very much where some days it's hour by hour. Some days it's minute by minute.
Yeah.
A lot of times I just have to keep reminding myself that 11 minutes is how long it takes for a craving to go away. If I can just last that 11 minutes and stay sober,
Yeah.
I can get past this, and my fortitude comes from the fact that I know that even though, in all honesty, I'm still depressed, maybe not as bad as I was, but still depressed, still dealing with this stuff.
Get it?
But knowing that I don't like the fact that I relapsed, but I did learn something from it. I did learn that I wasn't taking the right steps, and I did learn that I needed to balance this act out. So while I hate what I did and I hate the effect it had on the people around me, I'm kind of glad it happened, because now I am throwing myself into therapy and counseling and, all these other things. And when I have a bad day, I know there's people I can reach out and talk to.
It's good, creating that support system. It's
That-
important.
And here's the thing: remember, you're not bothering them.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the worst feelings in the world is thinking you're a burden on somebody. And even after all these years, every time, I still feel no one's ever made me feel like I was a burden on them, ever. But for some reason in my head, I'm thinking, man, if I call Joe, he's probably going to have to stop
That's that
fishing.
ism, man. It's just that junk in our head.
And a lot of it's ego, pride, well, for me, it's mostly ego, but that can get you drunk too. Use that support system you got, man. That is the most important thing, is to use it, because alcohol is not the problem.
Let's see, and I'm in that space where there are days where I just kind of white knuckle it
Yeah.
to get through the day sober, when I probably could reach out and talk to somebody, and I don't do it because I don't want to be a bother. This is Matt's second time around sponsoring me, because my first time I fell off pretty quickly and wasn't doing the things I needed to do. But during that first time, I did call him sometimes, but there were a lot of times I should have, and I didn't, just to have somebody to talk to about what I was dealing with. That it didn't have to be that they've got all the answers to what I'm dealing with, but just to let somebody know, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, and hear their what's the word?
Feedback.
feedback or commiseration is the word I'm looking for. So, and I know Matt's been there, and I know he can probably tell me, hey, I was there. I was going through that same thing. This is what I did to get past it.
Yeah.
But
sometimes just the act of talking alone, it gets it out of your head. It's like it's just gets it out of your head and then out your mouth. It's kind of, it exits and then
gives it less power.
And if that doesn't work, write it down.
Yep.
Yeah. Or
You write it down, it gets it out
do
for
both.
some reason.
I can tell you though, just talk to somebody other than yourself about whether, no matter what it is. Even if you're not an alcoholic, right? Don't turn into that person that goes nuts and does some crazy shit. Just talk to somebody about anything, and unfortunately we do have those people out there that talk about everything all the time.
And they sometimes feel like a bother.
I have a friend in town that's a business owner and very successful guy, and he's probably in his 60s. And we were talking about something the other day, and he said, well, I called my mentor about this, and I went, what?
Yeah.
And I was like, what you talking about? And so he's got a guy that's in his 80s that he talks to, and this man's successful at everything he's ever done in life, but he still talks to somebody and goes over there like we do, and he doesn't have any addiction issues. He's just a regular old guy. But I was like, that's pretty cool to know that, and I mean, that's how we recover. We recover together. It's us all talking and getting it out. And hey, I'm pissed off. I'm fixing to call somebody, and we get it out and we move on. And I know me, when I call and I'm fussing about something, I'm about halfway through that part and I go, God, I'm an idiot. Why is this even a thing? And I start to feel better, even though I realize with voicing it, it sounds, I put the sound to it and I go, okay, I can see where I'm at here, but I want to, and Mike can probably look this up faster than I can, cause I don't know what page it's on, but I know a lot of people in treatment. I've come across this too, and then they get out of treatment. And on this topic of the mental health side, there's a place in the big book in the back of that says about using doctors and medicine, not refusing the help of a doctor.
That is in working with others.
There you go. And I think, and I've seen this firsthand, people come into treatment and they go, I got a alcohol problem or a drug problem, when they probably had some depression. They probably had some other mental stuff that they needed to work on. And the nurses there go, hey, let's try this medication that's going to help as well. And I've been in there where people refuse and they go, I'm not taking anything. I'm stopping drugs. Well, they go worse off the rails. And so I go and pull this up and I show them, this is Bill and Bob. We don't refuse spiritual help, churches, pastors, all that stuff, and medicine and good doctors. We don't do that. It works all together. And I don't know where some people get in their head that I'm not gonna, I'm just gonna handle it one certain way. But I mean, it's there for us to use, and we should use them, especially in the early going until we can get on our feet,
Well, what I like about it is you said, you learned.
Sure.
There's something to be learned. And I think that's cool that you can look back on that and say that.
One of the most important things that someone has said to me recently was, it doesn't matter what it is that makes you feel how you feel. What matters is how you feel.
Yeah.
So what you feel is valid no matter what it is that's going on. Because you can't control how you feel about something. So in those situations, you definitely need somebody to talk to and say, hey, it may not be right. Like Matt has said, you may not be in the right, but you just still feel how you feel. And it helps to talk about it.
You always need another
Absolutely.
perspective too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could think somebody has said something about you, and and of course it doesn't matter if they did or didn't or who they are. If you think it, that is, and then whoever you're talking to may say, no, that, something don't add up here. Let me think about this. And next thing you know, you're like, oh, I feel foolish. And now you feel foolish.
Again, your perception and your thoughts of,
And feelings too. That's what's everybody operates on feelings and how they feel
At first, yeah.
at first. And you're right. You can't change the way you feel about something. And you're born, I think everybody's born with that inner thing, or they get a feeling. If it's a person, I kind of don't know about that person, or I like that person, whatever. I like this, I like that, I don't like this. But I learned, this is only me, I learned in sobriety with a good sponsor how to not operate on my feelings. So I can feel bad about something, but that doesn't necessarily change what the right thing to do is in that situation. Man, that's been a game changer, but it took a long time to get that way. And I still don't always do it. I've learned to pause.
Yeah.
Pause is real good for me, and shutting my mouth. Those two things work real good for me and keep me out of a lot of trouble when my brain wants to say something I shouldn't say, because feelings change. Feelings always change. They're going to change every day of your life. You're going to have today, I bet you felt great, and I bet you've had a moment where you didn't feel so good. Every one of us in here, they change every day. If we operate on feelings, it's a yo-yo all day. Just bzz, 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 up and down, up and down, up and down. Oh, I feel great now, so I'm going to be.
Well, the thing with emotions, they're not good, or they're not bad. They are, well, they just are.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting how we can go with the flow of positive emotions and be just fine with them, but no, a negative emotion come and we're like, or, reactive, and we need to do whatever to make it go away, when actually they're just like positive emotions. They're just negative, but we have to get the hell out.
And we never pay attention to the positive. We always just like to dwell on the negative.
For
and we
sure.
never go, oh, wait, these balance out.
Yeah,
Like,
and the thing is, they too will pass.
sure.
And just like I've said, my sponsor, one day I was in a shitty mood, and she goes, "This too shall pass." And the next day, or whenever that was, I was in a really happy mood, and she said, "This too shall pass." And I was like, damn.
You know how many AA meetings in the first year? I pretty much, I think I went to one. I know I did every day for the first year I was sober. Every single day at 5:30. I was only working 4 days a week back then. So I would go to a noon and a 5:30 on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I went to a lot of meetings. Do you know how many of them that I sat there at 4:30 and the meeting starts in an hour? And I went, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go in there. I don't feel like talking to nobody. I'm in a bad mood.
Many.
I don't want to do it. Do you know how many of those I sat on the couch and didn't go? None. That's when I knew I needed to go.
Yep.
And I went. And guess what? When I left, my feelings had changed. I never went in an AA meeting and felt worse when I left than when I did when I walked in. I've never had that.
I have, but that's when I'm in there's only one time. I mean, that doesn't change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. I get it. I mean, things can happen, but I mean, overall,
Yes.
it's a way of actually changing the way we feel, and I've never had that, so not operating on the way I felt. Because if I did that, if I was just like, well, that's how I feel, guess what? I'd be probably in rehab or jail or in the ground somewhere. It happened a long time ago. And again, that's having a good sponsor and listening to that sponsor and trying to do some things different,
Yeah.
So
Hanging around with your sponsor doesn't hurt either. Doing little things like this, or what I like the most when I was trying to get sober, or not trying, trying to be happy, going to big book studies and going to speaker meetings. That was probably, I like that. I didn't understand what the hell they were saying in big book studies. I didn't know what they were talking about and any of that.
Chipper japper.
A lot of times they would argue. I really liked that. Kind of a little bit of chaos came back in there, and you'd hear people talk, and it really happened. I mean, it is what it is, but you'd hear somebody would say, "This is how I feel the big book is," and then someone, "Oh, well, this is what the big book." Oh, hang on, y'all slow down.
Well, I think too, we think going in there that your whole life is going to be, oh my God, now I'm in this thing, this Alcoholics Anonymous thing, and this is it for the rest of my life. And it's not that, but it's one of my favorite parts of my life, and I've grown in other areas of my life now, and that's awesome, but that's still my people and that's my family. And I'm very proud to be a part of that bunch of people. And I was talking to this lady the other day, and she was saying she was dating a guy that was in AA, and she's not one of us. And she said, I'm just, it's all about AA. I don't want to. And I went, well, I mean, you liked him for a reason. I wonder what he was like before AA. So, it could be a lot worse, but, I'm pretty proud to be associated with that stuff and around those type of people. And, it's funny how our life will grow and go into different areas and different things of life. But it always, that was my foundation and always will be, on a new life was that bunch. So
Jordan, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was
Steve.
going to say my biggest problem right now is the patience part of it. Because I
We're all like, ha, ha, ha.
shocker.
Yes.
I want it done, and I want it done now, and that's not happening.
No,
Yeah.
it don't happen with any of us, and we
No.
all wanted 5 years the day we walked in.
I prayed for patient. That's the worst prayer
I've
I've
never
ever
done
said in my
that.
life.
Never
That's the
done that.
biggest mistake I've ever made.
I sat in rehab, Stephen, in the rehab, and they had the 12 steps in the lunchroom, and I read them. Okay, in the lunchroom, I did them in my head while I was having lunch one day in 30 minutes, all 12 steps. And I was like, I still want to get high. I mean, what kind of, you know what I mean? Like,
What kind of shit is this?
what am I doing? And I rolled out and I was like, there's nothing to this. What are we talking about? Like, I just did it. And, I skipped that part about character defects and amends and stuff.
Whatever
I
that
wasn't worried
means.
about that. Didn't apply to me, but yeah, I mean, we want to walk in and do all this stuff. And it's a grind, man. It's a good grind, but it's a grind. And we made the mess. We have to clean that mess up. And this is the part of, what is good though, is if you can stick with it, you're going to look back. And when you think about, as time goes by, when I think about going back, or I think about, like I was joking earlier about having a drink with all the kids in the house, and that was a joke. It really was. But, if I ever seriously consider it, and I haven't had that in a long time, but if I ever do, I remember back to those first 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, and I remember how I felt.
How about the first year?
Yeah. And I go, I'm not doing
Sorry,
that.
you're like,
Yeah, I'm not doing that
Thanks,
crap
woman.
again. I'm
No.
not. I am not. There's nothing worse than going back to that. So,
yeah, no thanks.
but Stephen, thank you for coming on, man.
Absolutely.
You're awesome.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Hopefully,
Once
y'all
you-
will have me back.
We will.
Continue
Absolutely.
to trudge the road to happy destiny.
Thank you.
All right,
Y'all have a
guys.
great one.
We will. We wrapped it up. We're gonna call it a show. Guys, thanks for coming. Appreciate everybody, and looking forward to seeing some new folks on the website. So, from Bossier City, Louisiana, this has been the Grouch and the Brainstorm.